morning, everybody, and welcome to the License Subcommittee for Monday, 10th of July at 10 a.m. And a warm welcome to everybody attending and the viewers watching on our council YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Roy Chamberlain. I'm chairing the meeting. And the details of the business today to consider today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are available online and are accessible underneath the live YouTube broadcast. For everybody that's present in the room, in order that you can be heard, toggle in, toggle off on your microphones, please. So when the red light comes on, that means you're on. Bit of housekeeping, fire alarm. I'm not expecting a fire alarm. If it goes off, it's the real thing. If you follow Ryan off, and we meet outside the Miller's Tap, which is rather apt for a licensing hearing. Mobile devices, gentlemen, ladies, please switch them off or put them on silent. It's not fair on anybody if they go off. Declarations of interest. Councillors, if you have a declaration of interest to make in relation to today's agenda, please ensure that you state whether it's pecuniary or non-pecuniary and give the reasons for your interest. Members need not declare an interest in any agenda item which have already listed on the register of interest. And furthermore, you do not declare an interest just because you're a ward councillor or you are a governor. Attendance roll call. I'm very keen for people to introduce themselves. So if you move from right to left, if you tell me who you are and why you're here. Thank you.
Ryan Dale, Democratic Services Officer.
Colleen Sullivan, Local Councillor.
Janet Gardner, Councillor.
Daniel Ferrer, Licensing Team Manager, representing Licensing Authority, Responsible Authority.
Councillor Hina McQuarner, I'm from South Ruislip Ward. Thank you.
So Leo Charlambides, Council for McDonalds, and to my left is Mark Gallant, who is the Operations Licensing Officer for McDonalds, and to my right is Abel Camos, who is the proposed franchisee for this site. Thank you.
Lois King, Principal Licensing Officer.
Matt Lewin, Legal Advisor.
Thank you, everybody. Before we move on to the agenda, the order of proceedings, just to go through that. Everybody gets a chance to make their case. The subcommittee only will be able to ask questions on what has been submitted. We will then move on to the discussion stage. All questions you can ask of each other. They have to come through the chair. I will lead the discussion. Then we go into brief, and I please emphasise brief closing remarks from all anybody who's making any representation. We then go to deliberate. Everybody leaves, take all your bits and pieces with you, and then you can either wait for the decision or you can watch it on the YouTube, which we'll make in due course. Okay with that? Right. The agenda. Any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
Any declarations of interest coming for the matter? No. Everything's in part one. Any matters that have been notified in urgent advance?
None, Chair.
Okay, move on. Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. You will all have received the report bundle and will be familiar with the application. This is a hearing to consider a contested application for a new premises licence in respect of McDonalds, Unit 4, Old Dairy Lane, South Ruislip, HA40FY. The application was submitted by Shoesmiths on behalf of McDonalds Restaurants Limited. Representatives from McDonalds and the franchisee are present today, along with counsel for the applicant. The application was made and advertised in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003. The application is for the provision of late night refreshment, both indoors and outdoors, Monday to Sunday from 2300 hours to 0500 hours. Opening times will be Monday to Sunday from 0500 hours until 0500 hours the following day, so in effect 24-hour operation. We have received a representation from the Licensing Authority as a responsible authority under the Act. In addition, 54 representations objecting to the application were received from interested parties. This included one from the 3 local ward councillors. Several of the interested parties are present today to deliver their representations in person. One representation in support of the application was received. A petition against the application comprising of 864 signatures was also received. 364 of these signatories were able to be identified as living in the London Borough of Hillingdon. I now invite the Licensing Subcommittee to determine this application, giving due consideration to the application and all submissions, both verbal and written. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Let's kick off. If you go to page 43, you all have the information back. Yeah. Okay. On point 2, last sentence, absolute minimum of delay when requested. Don't quite understand that. What is that? Some sort of time? What kind of time period are we looking at? On point 2.
If I'm correct, Councillor, is this the letter from
Yep, that's
from
That's
the
the
responsible
one
authority, as licensing authority,
Yeah,
Mr.
the one
Ferrer?
is that what's been suggested as a possible condition?
It would appear so, but that would be for Mr. Ferrer as the licensing authority to clarify that for you, Chair.
Councillors, any questions on what's been? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Right. The applicant, whoever wants to speak first. I'm always keen for the actual guy who's going to be running the show to also come forward with some sort of submission as well, please. Thank you.
Well, that's not settled yet, sir, though. So the main submissions will come from me on behalf of McDonald's. So the application is by McDonald's Restaurants Limited, which is the national company, and the stores are operated either by the national company as a company store or as a franchise. So this store, really depending on the nature of the license granted, will be offered to a franchisee. That's Mr. Kamos, who's here to my right, who already operates stores in this borough. He's been with McDonald's for some 27 years and a franchisee for 2, and he has 9 stores. This will be the 10th store if granted by you and your colleagues today, and he is available to answer any questions that you may have of him directly. So first, it's worth looking at the nature of the area. Your officers in the report have done an excellent job of setting out the character of the area, which is a mixed-use development comprising retail and leisure premises, including Cineworld, Asda, Nando's, and so on. And of course, that's what your borough has designed for this area. Your 2014 planning permission was very specific about what you wanted to see in this area, which is to provide a food store with cafe and petrol station, a cinema, and 5 restaurants, along with the residential development. You wanted no restrictions in terms of the hours or the operations, and that was clearly part of your planning policies, which are designed to ensure that you have a mixed residential and leisure offering in this area. And you'll see from the licenses that you've already granted, the fact that you have no restrictions is reflected by the licenses of currently Asda, Nando's, Cineworld, and so on. You envisage an all-day, all-night operation in this area. And that's very important for vibrancy, for regeneration, and for the character of this development and this scheme. And this has always been envisaged at the heart of this scheme. So there's also a sense that the representations seem to think that by opening a late-night restaurant in this area, we're somehow not part of the community, and that's quite wrong. Firstly, and most importantly, as a local restaurant, we depend on good relationships with the local community, with our local council, with our local police, in order to be successful. You can either see that as a cynical aim because it's about profitability, or you can take a more holistic view and observe that as part of the community, we will function better if we are part of that community. And what I can tell you is that in and around Ruislip, where Mr. Campos already holds a number of stores and operates them as a franchisee, he operates within his community. He provides the local police with the gazebo that they need in order to hold their surgeries and dropping sessions. He worked with the police post-COVID in order to facilitate drop-in sessions in the local McDonald's schools. He works in partnership with the Grangewood School, providing food for those families which don't have the same privileges that maybe the rest of us don't do. He sponsors the Christmas tree and the Wealdstone under-12s football clubs. The local fete of the St Swyneth's Wells Catholic Primary School, and also works with the local police in terms of its ASB projects in and around Ruislip. One of the ways he does that is to assist the police with CCTV, with evidence in order to provide an ASB profile. He's part of the bid, and he's also been asked for his 24-hour stores to stock and provide defibrillators on store. This is quite important because it often means that if you're able to respond within city centres, you're able to respond quicker. The other advantage of late night opening is that there's disabled access facilities, so it makes your nighttime economy that much more accessible to those people that might need wider facilities. This is quite apart from all of the jobs that are created. So, for example, if this licence is granted in the way requested, we're looking at over 60 local jobs. We're part of the Love Where You Live campaign, which is to do with our litter picks. It's to do with working with local communities to provide for littering awareness.
Sorry, could you just repeat that point again? I didn't quite catch what you said, that litter pick.
So we have Love Where You Live, which is a scheme promoted by each and every McDonald's store, where we have an outreach with local community groups. So, for example, at page 140 of this agenda, there's a local litter picking group. What we do is we encourage those groups to get in touch with us, and depending on our location, there will be local litter picks around schools, around parks, canals, the local area. This is quite apart from the local and regular daily picks that we have in and around our store. So that's sort of part of our campaign. We sponsor bins with local authorities and so on, as the case may be. So we very much consider ourselves a community player, and this gives you some support from that. In terms of the submissions that have been made, your legal advisor will of course let you know that what is key here is actual evidence and not just fears and perceptions around that. And in terms of our operating schedule, you will see on page 33 of your bundle that we have a fairly comprehensive operating schedule that addresses all of those means. Now, I see what's said by Mr. Ferrer about a degree of specificity, and I don't have a particular problem with that. But one of the reasons that we maintain the style that we maintain is because technical standards and experience changes, it develops, and so on. So we like the ability to be able to upgrade our CCTV, reposition our CCTV, for example, as may be required. But at this store, we have full internal CCTV, external CCTV, both at the front, the customer-facing, and also the rear entrance, which will be used by the delivery drivers. So full CCTV is there. We have a staff-safe system, which is being upgraded to a digital system. And what that means is that as well as our own internal monitoring, Staff Safe is a resource whereby each store is able to feed into an external independent viewer that can do things such as make announcements, impact on noise levels, and change the music, and so on. You'll have there our full details about partnership working, training, including conflict training for all our staff. And I don't know if you've visited a McDonald's store recently, but in line with many other quick service restaurants, you'll see that much of the ordering now happens either from your app or from a touch screen counter in the store. So this has had a significant impact on conflict and safety and so on. One, it means that you're in charge of your order. You're able to punch it in yourself. So any mistakes you make are yours. You get a receipt with exactly what you've ordered, so you can look at it and then you get a number. There's no issue with the staff. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You got my order wrong. It's all about personal responsibility. And of course, when we look at the representations, your legal advisor will remind you of paragraph 2.21 of the section 182 guidance, which makes it clear that beyond the immediate area of a given premises, what you do with yourself, whether you're drunk or whether you're eating quick service food and you're dealing with litter, that's about personal responsibility, and we can't hold people accountable for their own personal actions when they are away from the store. All our staff have safeguarding training. We know what to do when there are lone children, how to deal with them. We don't expect that during the hours of licensable activities that children should be coming onto the store, and if they do, that would be a cause for alarm. So if you look at page 42 of the bundle, you'll see a plan of the premises. I don't know if the printout copy is clear enough, but 42 is at the top. So if you're looking at that, you'll see at the very top, under 42, what looks like the back of the store. Do you see that?
It's my page. I've got page 41. You're talking about schematics, yeah?
The plan, yes. So you've got a much better.
Okay, page 41.
So you see at the top where there looks like a long corridor, that's actually the parking, the underground parking. So if you start from the front, you curve around the store, you follow the area past the Cineworld, and then just opposite the B&M, there's a plan on page 296, there's an entrance into the underground car park.
Sorry, could you just hold up the page you're talking about? Have you got printed? Because
I'm looking at the plan,
right, okay.
And I'm also asking you to bear in mind page 292, which is the plan of the local area. So I'm just seeking to explain what looks like a corridor actually relates to. So this relates to the underground parking area, or the covered parking area. So if you look at page 292, where you've got the plan, you'll see Cineworld, McDonald's and Asda next to each other. And you'll see between the Cineworld, there's a road, and on the opposite side is B&M. So if you look at the dotted lines, just before you get to the end of that grey block where Cineworld, McDonald's and Asda is the underground covered parking area. And that, what looks like a corridor, is in fact part of the underground area. because that is the route that delivery drivers would take. So they would come underground into the covered area, leave their mopeds, bicycles, hopefully fewer and fewer cars, and they will access what you can see from the map on page 41 as the Mac delivery room. So hopefully that's come clear on your plan. So the drivers with their radios, with their bags and so on are all required to be in the store. And the fact the store has been developed and designed to tackle that, which is exactly what your new Statement of Licensing Policy, Chapter 24, requires operators to do. It requires them to think about the impact of deliveries, mobile, remote and internet sales, and to undertake appropriate measures. So what we have here is delivery drivers are taking a route which is entirely avoiding the residential premises. It's in an underground sheltered area that's lit. Our front door is covered by CCTV, and our drivers and delivery persons are contained within the premises itself so that they can be supervised at all times. So that takes care of the delivery process. So what is not happening is they're not mixing with anyone that might be coming to the front to dine in the restaurant or to take their own takeaways. Delivery is a significant aspect of business. It was being developed slowly prior to the COVID emergency period, but the COVID emergency period really accelerated the process to the extent that significantly stores such as this, but other quick service restaurants, are now being designed to facilitate delivery sales. There are a number of really important aspects in terms of licensing that delivery sales impact on. It often keeps people at home, so it reduces the footfall into a premises. Given the partnership that we have with Uber, it's much easier to leave a bar or a pub or wherever it might be in the comfort of your Uber and order your McDonald's to be delivered to you at home. It means that there are private cars not coming into the area, and it's a reduction in litter because people are eating at home and they're disposing their litter at home rather than on the streets. So that's had an impact in certain nighttime economies around the country, depending on locations and where they are. So there are huge advantages to that. We're also able to control the delivery drivers. So even though it's a third-party company, we know who comes. We know who might have complaints. We're able to check their status, and if necessary, we're able to geofence drivers or ban them when there are any complaints. These are things we cannot do with private individuals who come and go across the premises. As I mentioned, there's a reduction in litter as a result of the delivery use. In terms of our litter policy, what will happen when a store opens is that they will have at least 4 litter picks a day. The litter picks tend to be done around their immediate vicinity and obvious areas. So here you can see it will be around the front of McDonald's, the area between Cineworld, McDonald's and Nando's, and probably round and along the main sort of residential roads. What happens is that a map is maintained and it's kept updated because it's in our interest to ensure that our surrounding area is kept clear. We welcome participation and insight from other groups and working with the local authority. The first litter pick starts at sunrise and the last is just before sunset, and so depending on the time of year it's organised in that way. The reason that there aren't overnight litter picks is to do with insurance and risk assessment and ensuring the safety of staff, though that is always kept under review, and if necessary litter picks are extended, subject to additional training with that. And then Love Where You Live, we also use 3-4 times a year to highlight the importance of caring for your local area and your local communities. We do work with local councils to sponsor litter bins, depending on the policies that the local council have, and also the highways department. So we're always very open to that. In terms of the waste and deliveries collection, that's all undertaken in accordance with the Planning Permission has a delivery noise management plan and a framework delivery and servicing plan. It essentially means that nothing happens before 6 a.m. or after 8 p.m. And in terms of litter, it's organised with the local authority, and the area here of development around Cineworld, McDonalds and Asda has dedicated bays for litter, which are controlled by the Planning Commission, and also they deal with stock. So that's all been dealt with by the Planning Permission. Sir, our view is that the impact of this premises operating, as with the other premises in the local area, into the nighttime economy, will have a positive impact on the local area. There'll be a well-lit store which is well-run, well-managed, and with no history of issues of problems or challenges. Mark's been in post for some 8 years, is it? 6 years. 6 years as a licensing officer. There have been no major reviews or issues with any premises licence. I also worked with Mark's predecessor for more years than I care to remember. And again, I can say to you that I'm McDonald's go-to barrister for licensing, and they've never had to come to me for a review. So it gives you an idea of the community impact that they seek to have, and also the way they work with local authorities. Sir, your experts in terms of nuisance, crime, disorder are not present. They don't have the concerns. Paragraph 9.12 of the Section 182 guidance tells you that the police are experts in are experts in crime and disorder, environmental health are experts in nuisance, and they do not have any concerns, and they are the experts. I hear what my colleague from licensing says, but I hope I've given you a good explanation of our evolving litter. Waste and stock deliveries are in accordance with the Planning Commission of your council, and as for the risks associated particularly with deliveries, which your licensing officer has asked for, it's quite clear that all of those risks are being contained within the well-lit, CCTV covered parking area that is behind the store, and we've built provision within the store to address that. So there'll be no one at the front, there'll be no bikes and so on. So, sir, those are my comments. I trust that they address the concerns, because as you know, licensing is about identifying real concerns, where there are real concerns, to provide conditions in order to address those. The operating schedule has not really been criticised in any particular way, so I'm really keen to hear what anyone else has to say in order to see whether or not anything further can be looked at in terms of the operating schedule. But given the nature of the evidence and the concerns, it just remains for me to commend the application to you as requested. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to go over the deliveries once again. I didn't quite catch it. So, are we saying the deliveries are going to be taking place, if you go on to page 300, whatever it is, 292, so are they going to take place on the side where the Cineworld is, or are they actually going to go into the underground car? It's not the underground car, but this is definitely where the confusion arises. Ground floor, because Asda's on the first floor. So, where are the actual deliveries going to take place? Are they going to drive into the ground floor and then from there? Just explain how it's going to get into the store.
So you see where Cineworld is, right on the corner. There's a road there, isn't there, between Cineworld and B&M. So that's the road, and then just behind where the M of the McDonald's is, they turn in there and they go into the ground covered car park area.
I know the site very well. I shop there nearly 3-4 times a week. So that's where because there is where the Cine World is. As you come down that service road,
Yeah.
we call it service road. It's 2 ways. Now there is containers there where they keep the waste, whether that's from Cine World or from whoever. But to get to McDonald's itself, where your site is, what I need to know is how, if the deliveries are going to go on the basement floor, should we say, how are you going to get all your stuff from the basement floor to your site?
So there's a door from the basement site at the rear, which is the door at the back on the map on page 41. So they don't come in from the front of the store. Our entrance...
I think the point I'm going, it's not going to go into pedestrian areas.
No.
It's not going to go where as they keep their trolleys.
No.
So it's at the far left. You have access under the cinema.
Yes, so from the site, you have a loading bay on the left-hand side as you drive down, a loading unloading bay. So any deliveries that we would get, like large deliveries of paper, stock, etc.
Could we just get this microphone? Because unfortunately, people
Sorry.
it's not your fault. It's
Yes,
they
so
can hear.
on the left-hand side you have a loading bay, which would obviously where our main deliveries would come in terms of, lorries with stock, cups, meat, etc. When there's no one there, the couriers will park there and then walk through to the back entrance, which is designated on that corridor, and that will take them into their own little cubicle area with seating, and then they pick up their delivery for couriers. So Uber, Just Eat, Deliveroo.
I'm just concerned about deliveries at the moment. So
Okay.
your main deliveries, your lorries,
The big lorries.
your articulated
Yes,
lorries,
the lorries
your
would
trunker
park
trailers,
would-
or whatever they might be, whatever's suitable. I just need
would
to
be in
understand.
that loading bay on the
So
left-hand
they
side.
come. So I just hold it up there. So they come down here,
Yep.
go into the.
No.
No.
As they run down the side of that road,
There.
on the left-hand side there is a loading bay dedicated
Right.
to
So they don't
delivery.
go anywhere in the parking area.
No.
Right. Okay, that's clear.
So again, any refrigerated vehicle, obviously there's a timing for that when they're allowed to come, but you've got the whole of the Cineworld blocking any noise that comes up from the
Got
lorries.
that. Got that. There's a mention of outdoor dining. Is it shown on the plan where this outdoor dining is going to take place?
So the area at the front on page 41, where it says retail courtyard, that's where there will be the provision for outdoor dining.
Okay, so that rectangle there, that's outdoor dining.
Yeah. So
In terms of hours, there's no hours of operation in terms of the outdoor dining. Do you have any restrictions on that?
no, sir, because it's during the day, it's not for licensable activity, so it's subject to our planning.
Yeah, I get that. I know that part. I know why we're here. It's between 11 to 5. Got that. So I'm asking, are there any? It's going to be 24 hours, basically. 11 to 5. There is outdoor dining taking
so
place.
the store hasn't opened, so they haven't determined their hours of operation. It typically lasts from the morning until early mid-evening, but it really depends on the risk assessment that the store carries out.
Right. We're obviously we've got to determine the application and what's presented before the committee. Sorry. So the question I ask once again: are the operating hours for the outdoor dining for the complete hours as shown on the application? I just need a yes or no.
No, sorry, I didn't understand the question. So there'll be no outdoor dining from 11 to 5. No.
So you're making that as part of your submission in terms of your conditions, that there will be no outdoor dining from 11 to 5, 11 p.m. to 5 o'clock in the morning. Could you tell me what... In terms of the community, you mentioned the community. Could you tell me... how you have the plan for the McDonald's, all the residents that are local, have you had any dialogue with them?
So there's no franchisee in place. So what happens is, firstly, the lease and the building is secured by McDonald's centrally. that has happened.
Just want to know, have you had any
McDonald's-
dialogue with any other residents? That's all. A yes or a no?
Not yet, no.
None. In terms of litter, you mentioned you have these litter patrols. So is litter an issue? Have you identified this as an issue?
So McDonald's generally have identified and work with the Department of Environment, have done so since 1980 on national as well as local schemes, that quick service restaurants do create litter. That's just a fact of the way people are. It's nothing that we condone or like, which is why we spearhead national schemes. It was previously BINIT, now we spearhead recycle schemes, and that's done on a national level. We work with local communities, for example, the Love Where You Live campaign, and then in terms of our own individual stores, there are specific litter pick routes and engagement with the local council and the local community as required.
Thank you. On page 9, if you go to the second paragraph, access to CCTV system will be provided by police at the request where reasonable. Could you just expand on what reasonable is? Do you have a time frame? Is it?
We have a really great history of cooperating with the local police. So we know, for example, that when the police, immediately doesn't work because it may need discs, it may need technology, it may need authorization, but certainly Mr. Camos, who works with the local police, I could ask him if he's ever had any problems working with the police, and I went through the list of schemes that you engage.
Morning. Yes, and no, I think when they mean reasonable is just within a quick time frame. So normally, clearly, we'd have to wait for the officers to come, dictate a time, get a USB stick. It's all digital. Obviously, provided that we get clearance from McDonald's through GDPR to being able to pass that along, we absolutely do that without any issues at all. In most cases, we've got really strong links with the local police forces, which is why in our Ruislip High Street we've sponsored the gazebo. We work very closely with them in all areas.
Sorry, so I'm going to cut you off there. I get that. The question was reasonable. So do you have 9 other restaurants, I believe you said. So in terms of just going off from what's in terms of the history that you have and the experience that you have with the company, so if a time limit, do you have a time average that if there was an incident or whatever, or the police came along, what's the average time it takes for you to actually provide access to the CCTV system?
It varies from on the moment, if the right manager is on duty, to 24 hours.
Same again, if you go to page 9, the paragraph near the bottom under noise, where it's practical to do, we are content to put measures in place. Could you give us an example of some measures? Because obviously, once again, I reiterate, we go off what's been presented to us, and I need to dig into what these measures are. So if you could tell me what measures you currently have in place. Obviously, you've got 9 other stores, and each premises each application is judged on its own merit, but you do see have some sort of similarities within the business. So if you could just tell me exactly what measures that you put into place.
So, sir, if you look at the plan, each of the stores will be fitted with the appropriate extractors and noise facilities, so they will meet common standards as well as adhere to the planning permission. This particular store also has, as you can see there, an entrance lobby which counts as an acoustic lobby. The building, as per its planning permission, as well as all the residents actually, had to be built to specific standards which are all set out in the 2014 permission. you'll see with regards to delivery, the way in which the delivery drivers are contained in their own delivery box. There is a dedicated parking area for the delivery vehicles. So those are the aspects that are key to this particular store. Otherwise, it's about the supervision by staff of patrons. So those are the factors that take place.
You just lead nicely onto my next point. How are you going to manage the noise outside in terms of you have, you said you're not going to have that open area, but how are you going to manage noise in terms of your patrons?
So, sir, the front is well lit. It's covered by CCTV. There are CCTV warnings. You can see, well, I've already mentioned that we work with the local police in Ruislip to build profiles, offender profiles, so we know what to look for. All our staff are trained in conflict training, ASB reduction, and our managers are trained to sort of work with our customers, if necessary, to go to the front, to move people along, but we don't tend to envisage those kind of impacts at this store in this particular location.
In your submission, I don't believe you made any mention on incident logs. Could you tell me what your incident logs?
We have incident logs. We have logs for everything. So absolutely, we're quite content to accept the condition. So our incident logs cover everything from, we have logs covering incidents, visits, litter picks, deliveries, cleaning, interaction. That it's a Yes, well, thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for. We're certainly well audited, but that includes all our incident logs as well, and they're available to the police or the local authority if they need to look at them.
I'm just thinking more about, you mentioned how you've got the processes and procedures in place on what you've mentioned on quite a few times, and that's encouraging to hear that you have this in place. But how are you going to deal with potential complaints from noise 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? What is your process and procedures regards that? If a resident was to complain, because I mean, go back to license hours, the later the terminal hours applied for, the greater would be the need to address the issues of disturbance and nuisance. So, principally on that,
well, so if you look at the
what
map,
do you have?
There are no neighbouring residents facing the store. So if you look at the fact that we are facing the Nando's area, the reality is that in the near vicinity, in the immediate vicinity of the store, it's about the conduct of the patrons within the store or when they're just leaving. And so, for example, in Winchester, a study was done, I think before Mark's time, which demonstrated that people leaving a McDonald's left a McDonald's quieter than when they arrived. So we fully expect that experience to continue. Certainly,
Sorry, do you have that report here?
No, I don't.
No, you don't. Okay.
But it reflects company experience. So in our store, the outside area will be closed after 11, so during the licensable activities, it won't be there. And in terms of people leaving in the immediate vicinity, they will be supervised by us and our CCTV. I'm not sure what can be expected to be done legally for people once they leave the immediate vicinity of our premises. So if you or your colleagues have any suggestions, I'd be happy to address them with my clients.
That's a very good point, but it goes this way. You have to give us what you are actually presenting. Right? We can discuss that.
Discussion that goes both ways.
That goes in the discussion stage. This is just on your representation.
And Section 2.21, as your legal advisor will tell you, we cannot be held responsible for people when they leave the premises, which is why I'm asking, what shall we do?
The question I asked was clear, but it wasn't answered. So
Well,
I'll ask it once again.
So I'll do it again then.
Right, okay.
So
I'll ask the question once again on what's submitted. If there are complaints from a resident about noise or nuisance, what's your process to deal with that?
So if there is a complaint, I'd like to know where it comes from, because you will see the location of the McDonald's store It is within a leisure precinct with Cineworld, Nando's and others. And so when I look to the very immediate area of McDonald's, I'm not clear that there are any residences directly in the vicinity. What I can say is that in the store, the premises is covered by CCTV and people are managed in the store. The outside area, the retail area, is kept closed. Even though it's closed, people's comings and goings are recorded by CCTV as well as part of the well-lit area. In terms of delivery drivers coming to the store, well, I've addressed that, and they have their own separate area. In terms of what might happen further down the road, away from us, I have difficulties answering that question because they go beyond the legal responsibility of McDonald's and are a matter for your environmental health department and for the police to deal with.
If I may just add, can I give an example of how I would deal with it if it was in one of my existing other 9 restaurants? That might give you some guidance as to how I may well approach it should we be fortunate enough to secure a license here. So like in any other one of my stores, the importance of engagement with local residents is of course very important. If that complaint did come in, let's say at 3 a.m. as you outlined, the important thing to do is to obviously take details of the resident that would bring forward that issue. We would of course arrange a time for us to re-meet with that resident where it's appropriate, discuss the incident, and then obviously depending on what the incident is, and how much we're able to influence it, we would of course engage them with local stakeholders to understand how best we can take it forward. I think that's the important piece, mindful that of course that there are limits to how far me and my managers can go in dealing with specific issues as they arise, and of course for their own safety it is not appropriate, nor do I encourage them to leave the premises to go and address with issues beyond the boundary of the restaurants. But I am fully aware and I understand the importance of working with residents to make sure that issues that do come up at any time of the day are addressed with appropriately. Just to put it into context, I've been with McDonald's for 27 years. If I'm fortunate enough to be granted a franchise for this particular restaurant, my commitment to that business is for at least 20 years. So I'm not here for the short term, I'm here for the long run. So my desire and my commitment is to ensure that I'm a good neighbour. And that means that I listen, that I find solutions that work for everybody, whilst also being mindful and respectful that I'm there to serve the people that ultimately are going to be my customers. So not only will they visit me one day to hopefully purchase a Big Mac and fries, but they do so in the comfort knowing that that's a safe and respectful place for them to visit.
Thank you. In terms of, you said you're going to have 60 staff. Could you tell me what the shift patterns are?
So the shift patterns are quite... before I hand over to Abel, one of the reasons that McDonald's centrally applies for 24 hours is that 24-hour operating helps our staff. What it means is that a late night shift typically starts at 10 o'clock and will finish just before the breakfast run. So what that means is... could you just have the times between 11 and 5? Are there going to be any shift changeovers? That's what I need to know. Typically they come in at 10 p.m., so there's the handover for the late shift at around 10 p.m. and then there will be the change of shift just after 5, though it's subject to the local store at 6 a.m. So what happens is our late night staff are going home when the early commuters are starting, and likewise are coming into the store at 10 p.m. So employees find it safer to operate in that way. There's more public transport available. It just meets many of their needs. It also has an environmental impact and an environmental benefit, and if anyone wants to know about that, I can deal with that then. But that's the staff-based reason for opening at these times, and I'll ask Mr. Camos to just mention what he proposes to do when he's running the site, if he does so.
Thank you. So I currently already trade 2 restaurants 24/7, and we apply exactly that philosophy, understanding full well that it is far more convenient for my staff to arrive at the restaurant whilst there's sufficient local transport, and they do so early evening, and they tend to stay until the early morning because, as Leo has quite rightly pointed out, it is safer for them. There is a little incentive to bring them in for them to finish at 2, 3 in the morning because it means that potentially they don't get the hours that they would have wanted. It's also a good opportunity for them to, of course, work shifts that's convenient for them. Ultimately, that's the key thing to remember here is that I'm creating jobs that ultimately people wish to fill, and clearly keeping them in until the early hours of the morning is better for the business because it creates a level of certainty from a staffing number to enable me to run those restaurants in the manner that my customers would expect and demand.
Thank you. In terms of, could you just tell me a little about your delivery drivers? I know Lewis put a couple of companies down. I'm sure there's other companies that deal with this, Uber or Just Eat or whatever. There's quite a few of those. So so where do they pick it up from? Where do they park their bicycles? Are they electric? Are they whatever? If you could just explain that to me, please.
So, sir, the partnership is a third-party partnership. It's at the moment Uber, Just Eat, and Deliveroo. So all the drivers, all the drivers, delivery persons will pick up their orders from the delivery room. Do you see that on the plan on page 41? So behind the kitchen, to the left of the front entrance, if you follow it across, it says Mac Delivery. Yes, it's absolutely tiny, yeah.
Would you mind if I...
No, yeah.
It'd be easier. I'll just point that out to you.
Can you see?
All right, okay. So once again, that's the access where your deliveries come through as well. Right, okay. In terms of your customers, where will they be parking their cars?
If they come by car, they'll park within local parking facilities.
Could you be more precise, please? But what do you mean by local parking?
Well, there's the 24-hour parking at the Asda, and wherever else in the local area they can lawfully park.
So what you're proposing is that they can park in Asda and the other areas?
So I'm not proposing they park anywhere because I can't control where people park.
I just need to know, because in terms of where you expect your customers... Okay, we'll go another way. So if they don't come by car, which route do you expect them to take to come to McDonald's?
Well, if they don't come by car, they'll be coming by public transport, or they'll be coming on foot because they'll be from the local area.
So what route? On the map here, on page 292, could you tell me which route they'll be taking? Or which routes are available for them to take?
Well, it's public highway, so they can take any route they like. I don't understand the question, sir, or how I'm going to control how people get to a store.
I never asked the word control.
Right.
I was quite clear in what I asked. I said, how are your customers going to go to your store and leave your store? What route is available to them?
So again, I'm very confused, but they'll use the public highways and they'll access it just like they would Cineworld, Asda or Nando's. So you said you visit the area 3-4 times a week, so you probably know the highways better than I do.
That's definitely true, I do. But I'm asking the question from your representation. So from that, would I take they can go along Arla Place, they can come from Long Drive, Victoria Road, and park. And in terms of parking, just let me finish, sir. So parking is available in Asda car park. That is the Asda car park, I imagine, and then also in the Aldi and BMM car park. Would I be correct?
So anywhere that they're lawfully entitled to park, they'll be able to use if that's something they choose to do.
Councillors, any questions on what's been presented? Councillor Gardner.
I've got a couple of concerns. Mr. Campos, when you were talking about CCTV, you mentioned the right to manager in terms of giving CCTV to the police. So do you have wrong managers?
No, we have no wrong managers. It's a question of training and security. So what we want to do is to make sure that if you're going to access CCTV, which has potentially sensitive data because of data protection, we want to make sure that those matters are being taken into account. So it may well be that if the police come into a store at a time when there's a changeover of shift or a manager is dealing with something else, that one person might not be able to do that. But generally, in any given McDonald's store, there is someone available who knows about CCTV, who can access CCTV, and is alive to data protection implications. And I think that's what is meant by that.
Right, I've got another question. On page 34, under public safety, said the store operates, or Presinders still will operate, a no alcohol containers policy to prevent persons carrying open alcohol into the in-store area. How are you going to be able to police that, short of searching people? And then if you're searching somebody and they have got either an open or a closed container, which they will use maybe when they're sitting down and can't be seen, that could create problems. How do you anticipate dealing with that?
So the operating schedule shows that we've got MABO SIA accredited conflict management training. That deals with what we do with difficult customers that are trying to smuggle in contraband, alcohol, whatever it may be. So our staff are trained to deal with that. It's not a very attractive area to bring in those kind of substances because you've got full light, full CCTV, full coverage. This is why we're able to work with the police to profile antisocial behaviour individuals because the level of technology that we operate is so good and so effective. The staff are also supported by the staff safe system. Now the staff safe system sounds somewhat odd, but if you press a button in the store, a control room in Scotland will make an announcement and say, you there in the burgundy tie, stop typing and focus your attention. And it has that effect on you. You suddenly jump up and you're thinking, who's talking to me? The fact that it's someone outside the store means that there's a degree of distance between the person over the tannoy and the staff. So it lowers the impact and likelihood of conflict. The other thing we do is we control the music and the quality of music. It's an unfortunate common statement on modern manners that if you play classical music to people, they leave. Whereas if you play pop music, it'll keep them in. So the volume of the music and the style of the music has an impact on conflict and how people react, whether or not the free internet is switched on. So these are all kind of micro measures that are built into the long system, which enable us to respond to different types of attitudes. So it's a well-known fact that classical music, for example, discourages drunkenness in public spaces, which is why public spaces pump out classical music. We do the same in the store. So it's a package of measures taken together that have the impact on reducing noise, antisocial behaviour, or the kind of customers that we just don't want.
Can I do a follow-up on that, please?
Far away.
Well, my concern is that if somebody is the term in drink, I don't think they care whether you've got classical music playing, whether somebody's been trained in this, that and the other. I mean, I'm thinking about the safety of your staff, first of all, and also if these individuals are leaving, they will be going past residential properties and things like that. I know you say you're not responsible for people once they leave the custody of the premises, but I'm thinking about your staff and also the residents.
So, Mum, we completely agree with you. I mean, these systems work because we use them up and down the country. So they may seem like small measures, but they do make an impact. And when taken together in a well-run store, we're able to have that direct impact because we don't want drunks from wherever they're coming. We don't want antisocial behaviour because it's bad for our staff and it's bad for our neighbours. And these systems, and ultimately, if there is a problem at a store, we will call the police, just like anyone else will do, because that's what we will do. But all of our measures taken together and implemented in the right way reduce the likelihood of crime, disorder or antisocial behaviour or nuisance on our premises. As I said, that it's the same way that, for years we've been telling people when they leave a nightclub to give people a lollipop because they make slightly less noise with a lollipop in their mouth. Small, good practice accumulated over time does have a direct impact on the way the stores operate, including classical music. I was a sceptic too, but I've been on enough site visits to have seen it in operation now to have been a convert. Well, I've been sober for 23 years. I don't drink, so I'm a rather dull licensing practitioner.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner's touched on CCTV, but I want to take you back to page 34, where you mention that, that CCTV is operated where images are retained on a hard drive system, but you do not state how long you actually keep them for, please.
We definitely keep them for the full calendar month, the 31 days. The condition is phrased in that way to just give us the maximum flexibility. But if you want the wording of your licensing officer at page 42, we don't have a particular issue with that. The reason I say that flexibility is, for example, we have a lot of staff-safe conditions which were based on a analog system, and they're now moving to a digital system, and it just means that there's a lot of minor variation and variation applications going in, for which I'm very grateful, but for which the stores necessarily aren't. So it's just about developing and keeping in place a degree of risk assessment, because nothing's done in a McDonald's store without risk assessment. Everything from the temperature of the oil and the way we reuse the oil to how many members of staff there might be. So everything goes through constant risk assessment and is upgraded in light of new technology. So that's why the condition is phrased in that way. But like I said, if you want the wording on page 42 and 43, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Can I take you back to litter, please? I know you hold great store by litter picks, etc. But my concern is, are bins provided for customers to dispose of their litter responsibly, and are they fit for purpose, please? Thank you.
So McDonald's is always happy to sponsor bins. As I say, we recognise that the impact that stores such as ours have on the local area, which we don't like. So we always work with local councils and the local landowner. I'm not entirely. I think the highways landowner here is the council. So we're always very happy to sponsor bins. They tend to be located near to the store. Certainly the ones that are on our curtilage that we can clean and clear. And then the issue that we typically run into is whether or not the council wants to collect refuse. So it's all well and good for us to sponsor a little bin which is away from the premises, and we're happy to do that. Say, for example, in local parks or local walkway areas or whatever it may be, we do that, but then sometimes councils will say to us, well, we don't want them because we don't have the resources to collect them. So it's part of tying into the local authorities' waste collection plan, which is also part of Love Where You Live campaign. So we see ourselves as a partner to the local authority, and we'll do mostly what you ask of us. But certainly on our curtilage there will be litter bins and they'll be collected. We sponsor recycling. So, for example, you'll have seen the way in which plastic straws have been phased out. McDonald's were quite late in the day in introducing paper straws for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of the carbon footprint, we needed to find a UK-based supplier, and then we needed to find a UK-based supplier that could actually meet the entire order of the stores. So it meant that there was a delay in paper straws that were recyclable. We've moved from a bin it campaign to encouraging a recycling campaign, and that's sort of part of the process that we work with.
And if I may just add to that, I think your question was specifically around are the bins fit for purpose, and I can certainly expand on on the bin situation. Firstly, externally, although not shown on the plan, there are several bins located there to make sure the customers and patrons have the ability to
Could you mark it on the... Sorry to interrupt. Because once again, we go by what representation's been made.
Okay.
I understand a lot of it is now verbal, so that's why it takes time. I get what Mr. Leo has said and the points he's making, and but you know, if you could mark it on the bin, and then we'll have a look at it later on. If you mark it on the bin, that'd be good. Any other questions on this?
So I was going to say about the bins internally, which are shown on the drawing, if I may, because I think it comes to your point, Councillor Sullivan, around the bins being fit for purpose, and they absolutely are. So they are made to segregate rubbish at the point of it being disposed. So cups, lids, and general waste are segregated there, and then they're backhauled back either through our internal supply chain, through Martin Brower, for it to be fully reused, or working in partnership with Veolia, which is our national provider. That rubbish will get collected, will get separated, and will get recycled fully. So our bins are indeed fit for purpose, and there's a few dotted around. They're called recycling units. If you see them on the drawing, that's what ultimately they are. And there's at least 2 or 3, I think, in the customer-facing areas, in the dining area, in the restaurant.
If you finish, I'll just one other point out. Just gonna, on the plan of waste. At what time? You mentioned 6 o'clock till 8 p.m. That's the time you're going to have your deliveries, and does that include the waste collection as well?
So yes, there's a delivery noise management plan, which is part of the planning. Microphone.
Is the plan here? Because I didn't find it in the pack. That's why the question.
No, so the plans are part of the planning permission.
Right, as you know very well, we're completely separate from planning. I get that. The question I ask is, it's not in the pact. That's why I'm asked the question. I understood it. So it's between 6 and 8.
6 and 8, yeah.
That's all I need to know, yeah? 6 to 8. That includes refuge vans, deliveries and everything else. So 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Till 8 p.m.
Refuse is subject to the local authority collection times.
I'm saying the parameters that you are working within is 6 to 8. Thank you. If there's nothing else, Daniel.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Councillors. My name is Daniel Ferrer, Licensing Team Manager from the Licensing Authority as a responsible authority. I'm here in relation to the application for late night refreshment 11 o'clock to 0500 throughout the week on behalf of McDonald's Restaurant Limited at the site that's already been mentioned, Unit 4, Old Dairy Lane, Ruislip, HA40FY. My full representation could be found on Appendix 2, pages 42 to 44. I don't intend to go through every single line, Chairman. There's been a lot of discussions which I think have been quite useful because we didn't have them previously. But I'd like to highlight some of those concerns and our position as it stands. In terms of crime and disorder, those 2 main strands you will see in my representation about CCTV and incident logs. I appreciate what the applicant has said about all those measures. And yes, I agree, the police, the experts are not here, but they will understand that as a responsible authority, like we have been for a few years now, we have to make our comments on where there's issues of concern. And it's us going more specific in relation to those CCTVs. We found it very general in terms of the light in the operating schedule. And so, as I understand it, they've confirmed they accepted the condition. And my main concern was about that it's operating when it's opening. It's kept for a minimum of 31 days. It's provided on request not only by police but also our licensing authorised officers under the Act, and that there is person who is conversant with and familiar with the running of the CCTV, and it sounds like that would be it. In terms of the incident log, we've mentioned the situations, if you like, the incidents that we would like on their incident log, and I understand that they have loads and loads of audits and reports, but we would like to formalise them, and I hope they understand that. I mean, CCTV and the incident we feel are essential in terms of the operating hours which have been requested, and we think that's essential. In terms of public safety, we've closely looked at the plans. There's a lot of routes for customers and staff, and we simply ask that these escape routes are kept clear, unobstructed, maintained, because obviously the safety of the customers and indeed the staff are paramount for us. especially in cases of emergency. I think the main concern that we have is the area of prevention of public nuisance, which have been talked about. I'd like to talk about my concerns. Again, the main reason is essentially for these opening hours, and I understand that the applicant has said that, I think they used the word central applications, not blanket, but that's the standard that they sort of use. And I think it comes across, I sense, in the application itself. It seems very sort of general, and our job is to look at it, scrutinise it, and see what is specific for this particular site. We say that there is, not fear, but potentially looking forward, a risk that there may be a public nuisance for the situations that we've talked about. Firstly, people noise. Yes, people probably enjoying themselves, going to and from the premises, laughing, joking, generally having a good time. We're not against that. But it's having those systems in place, and I know that you've offered quite a lot in terms of the deliveries, but the residents, and when I done a site visit last week, they may not be directly opposite the premises, but in Isle of Place, I would say 40, definitely under 50 metres, at a diagonal sort of like angle. And they are very close. I'm talking about Dolomite Court in specifically. And so, and even when I was watching during the day, there was people passing through, not directly going to that site because it's not opened. There is a concern that at those very late times or early mornings, they'll be coming to and from to McDonald's. And yes, I take the point about personal accountability, I do. But there is a risk there. There is concern that there will be disturbance. And I think also the vehicle noise as well. It seems like they have a plan for deliveries, and I appreciate that you've been quite open and transparent about where they plan to be, but it's what happens in practice. We can't control everything, yes, and we're not saying that should be the way. But if customers are driving early hours inside Asda, that's directly opposite Isle of Place. So that's engines running, that's potentially music, and that's potentially people not dispersing properly. So I'll be interested to hear about dispersal zones policies as well, but I'm sure that they have them. It's what happens in practice is the main thing. And as I said, not a fear, but just foreseeing what can happen and us having discussions about that. I don't mean to sort of like touch on the deliverer. I think we've mentioned that as well. You will see in my submissions, Chairman, that those are our concerns, and we've talked about that at length. I think, and also in terms of litter patrols as well, specifics. So the frequency of these litter patrols, I understand there was 4, one for dusk, one for dawn, recorded, documented, the sufficient number of litter bins, which the council have always pointed out, and how customers are informed of this as well. I assume there'll be signage as well. So that's our main concern, Chairman, prevention of public nuisance. I'd like to also touch on, if I may, protection from children from harm. And I note that the applicant has stated that they don't foresee or that there'll be an issue with this, but we can't guarantee that. I mean, McDonald's is going to be attractive to young adults, families living in the area. And they talk about they're going to use their normal practices, so a little more information and detail about what exactly the specifics are for these, for what they've got planned at this particular site in Ruislip. Chairman, those are my comments in relation to the application. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Those are my submissions for the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. You mentioned the proximity from the site to the houses. You mentioned 50 metres. Was that measured or?
It's an approximate, Chairman. I visited last week and I did note that Dolomite Court, I believe, definitely under 50 metres, I would say. I didn't measure it, Chairman, but definitely in sight, but not directly opposite.
Yeah, got that. In terms of you mentioned the car park at Asda. So if you go into page 292, once again, I imagine that where McDonald's Asda, that is the Asda car park, yeah? So if you go from the edge of the car park, I'm going to the extreme right of it, how far is the houses from that car park?
Yeah, I mean, I said, I didn't measure it. Probably about 50 metres, I would say.
Is it 50 from McDonald's, or is it 50 from the car park edge?
The car park edge is quite close. It's closer than Dolomite Court and those flats. I mean, that's potentially if vehicles parked there. It would be opposite our place.
Okay. Councillors, any questions, clarification on what's been presented? Councillor Sullivan.
Sorry. What is your policy for under 15s? I think that was a question you were going to ask.
You missed that point. That'll be later on then in discussion. Anything for Daniel? No? Okay. Right. Move on to other parties now. How shall we play it? I think we've got the councillors there, so which ward councillor would like to speak? Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah. Thank you. Just been handed some notes here. So, okay, my name's Steve Tuckwell. I am a ward councillor in South Ruislip, and I will be addressing, I think, the point that was raised earlier on, the real concerns of the 400 to 500 people that occupy Isle of Place, that have been in contact with myself and Councillor McQuarna and Councillor Mills as the ward councillors of South Ruislip, who have vehemently opposed, and I agree with them, the notion of McDonald's operating on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week. First thing I'd like to just pick up is that I think it was said earlier on that the provision of late night refreshment didn't include outdoors. Yet I'm looking at the application form that it says, will the provision of late night refreshment take place indoors and outdoors, or both? And both is clearly indicated. So I'd like to just understand what the outdoor dining arrangement is part of this application. I'm also quite shocked to hear about, and there was some great sort of sound bites that came from the gentleman earlier on, which you'd expect from a global corporation such as McDonald's. But I was quite shocked to hear that they want to be a good neighbour, yet there's been no resident engagement. There's a huge complex. Granted, it is a mixed-use complex that is designed for these units to complement Cineworld and attract local business to our area, which has to be celebrated. But there has to be a balance in achieving that. So there's been no resident engagement at all to seek the input from residents, and they are fearful, they are anxious. As ward councillors, we are dealing constantly with antisocial behaviour in this particular part of the world. Last night, there was an extensive police presence in the Asda car park. Over 100 vehicles descended on Asda last night with an extensive police presence dealing with the disturbance that it was causing the residents in Isle of Place. Now, having a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week McDonald's will only increase that risk of more antisocial behaviour, more disturbances to residents. And that's something that we are eager as councillors and as a local authority to significantly protect. I think the gentleman said earlier on he was looking for suggestions about how noise could be mitigated here. Well, my suggestion would be to withdraw this application. Absolutely, because that would be the only way to mitigate noise. Night shift resourcing. The gentleman there was talking about the resourcing model for this particular. I'd be interested to understand how resourcing is going to be managed, how attrition is going to be dealt with, so that we're not finding ourselves, if unfortunately this application was to be approved, that we wouldn't find ourselves in a position where there was a lack of staff on the night shift, which could then lead to queues, could then lead to all sorts of other issues being highlighted there. Quite creative around the delivery drivers, which we know from other examples of McDonald's in the community is a huge concern for residents. It's a safety concern. It's one of the subjects that we've put forward for public safety, and I can see that attempts have been made to ensure that there is a demarcation between delivery drivers and pedestrians visiting through the front. But what guarantees are there that there will not be slippage into the Isle of Place side? We're going to be asking delivery drivers to reverse back out, go back onto the roundabout, take their chances with Asda shoppers, take their chances with HS2 vehicles, which are currently significantly in that area and are going to be in that area for a number of months to come. How are we going to stop them from instead of going out through the designated route, bikes, mopeds, or whichever it is going to be sort of transversing into the Isle of Place, which is then going to cause major issues and public safety. It's also going to, I think it's actually added to the public safety element, because we're now increasing the traffic in what is already a very busy shopping area. We've got people with pushchairs, people with shopping trolleys, and now we're going to have a significant number of mopeds, bikes, trying to sort of navigate their way through. So I think that actually adds to the situation. Turning back to the submission that we've been put forward. So again, noise. I'd like to really understand, are we going to be having outdoor dining at 3 o'clock in the morning or not? I'd really like to understand more information about how noise is going to be mitigated. It does seem a bit washing of hands. What happens in the store is down to us, but once they leave, you're free to kind of deal with it how you are, and that's not right on residents. We need to ensure that the residents, your neighbouring residents, you want to be a good neighbour, and I applaud that, but to be a good neighbour isn't to have 24-hour opening. It's just going to cause immense disruption. People with young families. There's going to be the risk of people trying to cut corners. You're going to have people trying to visit the store. Instead of going to the Asda car park, they're going to be parking illegally in Isle of Place and along Victoria Road. So there's just too much risk here to ensure that this application goes forward. We have a children's playground just down the road. How are we going to ensure that litter and debris you don't clear overnight? I can understand you eloquently said about the risks of nighttime litter picking, but children wanting to use that playground first thing in the morning, we're already seeing those bins being abused. We're already seeing significant litter being put in there, and we as councillors are working with the management company to compel them to deal with that. We've also got the issue of, this is going to be one of the only areas in this part of the community that is going to be open 24 hours. You've already heard about the story. It's documented. We've had situations with car meets last night. This is going to be a beacon for the area, people to come from all around, because it's going to be the 24-hour McDonald's. You're going to have Wi-Fi. You're going to have classical music by all accounts. And it's just going to attract people to this particular portion of the community, which is going to then heighten the risk of antisocial behaviour, which is going to devastate the residents of Isle of Place, which are just adjacent. And then what I did hear earlier on, that there are no neighbouring residents. Have you ever been there? Go and have a look. Dolomite Court is the one which is literally just opposite where this McDonald's is going to be. But the knock-on impact that it's going to have on the rest of the estate is there to be seen. And this is what residents are telling us. So much so that myself and my councillor colleagues held a street surgery with residents. They came out in their droves to compel us to oppose this application. That then led to the Safer Neighbourhood team from the Metropolitan Police, who also had a street briefing the following week. The same residents came out and they also compelled the police to oppose this. It puts the police in a difficult position, but that's what they were telling the police. So, I think I've outlined my stall quite clearly. I recognise that McDonald's want to be good neighbours, and it's in your interest to do that, but I think this scheme is just too much for this particular complex. I don't know if Councillor McCartney wants to add anything.
You've covered it really well, thank you.
I've covered everything, Chairman.
Thank you. You mentioned the Safer Neighbourhood team there at the end. In terms of, have there been anything specific being given? Have you tasked them with anything in terms of that area?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, the Safer Neighbourhood team, who we work very closely with on for a variety of issues, not just for Isle of Place, but for all of the area that we represent. It's been well documented, and I think there's even images in the bundle where you can see, there are all sorts of practices that go on late into the evening. It's cameras we had to install. Hillingdon Borough had to install cameras on the outset, which are linked directly here to the London Borough of Hillingdon in the Civic Centre. They've increased their patrols.
So just on that, just interrupt. So what's the location of these cameras?
They are at the entrance to Victoria Road as you come in, and there's 3 or 4 which are further down Isle of Place. They've also got their own cameras. I believe Trinity have got their own cameras as well. and these go all the way down to the entrance, which is down by the Middlesex Arms pub.
Have we had any members' inquiries raised on these issues? Members' inquiries, gentlemen, are... Sorry, everybody. This is something, a process that the council uses in terms of report any issues.
The answer to that question, Chairman, is yes. Several members' inquiries, they can be easily looked at by officers if they wanted to see how that works. And that's been a range of issues from littering to antisocial behaviour, which is the number one area of concern from residents.
Councillors, I know we go to the discussion stage, but I can answer the point about outdoor. That's been removed, so there's going to be no outdoor food taking place. That's the applicant made it quite clear that that's what's been offered. Councillors, any questions on what's been presented?
At the moment, thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, I've got one. One is saying that there's going to be no outdoor eating between 11 and 5.
We can do that as a discussion case. Just what Councillor Tackwell has presented.
Oh, no.
No, is that all time? Right.
Councillor, you mentioned at the beginning of your representation that you were representing the concerns of 400 to 500 people, and I think there was a suggestion that 400 to 500 people might have been occupying Isle of Place. Do you know how many people live in Isle of Place and particularly in Dolomite Court?
Yeah, it's about 400 to 500 people. That would include children as well.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few families that came out with their children when we were speaking to them on that very sunny Saturday morning. I remember it well. But that's not just Isle of Place. We've had representations from Angus Drive. We've had representations from people in other parts of South Ruislip who understand that this could have a far wider impact than just the direct impact that it would have on the residents of Isle of Place. There's also been a petition, I think, of several hundred that have come in through various formats for submitting petitions, and there was quite a large petition that came in, or there was a lot of representations which came in as part of this committee hearing as well.
Yeah, but on that point, the committee are aware of what kind of weighting we put on the petitions and where the petitioner lives. I think I've seen in Edinburgh. I've seen Ilford. So yeah, be assured that the committee will put the appropriate weighting on all representation that's been made, whether it's in a petition or whatever. Right, we're going to move on to who have we got in terms of other parties here? Who would like to? Right, okay, we need to make some space. I'm going to throw my pen. Let's see who we get first. Mr. Kaufman is there? Is Mr. Kaufman there? Okay, so I'm just going to go off my list. I've got Alan Kaufman, Lynn Kaufman. Who else is here to speak?
I'm here. My name is Bumit Chandi.
Yeah, we got you as well. Yeah. Is Mr. May here? We do have a Mr. May? No. Hayley Smith? No. Okay, right. So I think if all three of you sit down there, then we can go one by one. Thank you. So, in your time, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. I'm not going to go over all the points. I think Councillor Tuckwell has made some very good sort of points here. But of all the criteria are required to rule number 2 on the list, prevention of public nuisance, in the opinion of the South Ruislip Residents Association, has the strongest evidence to support it. Councillor Tucker has mentioned Isle of Place, but you've got the impact of the houses or flats on Victoria Road. And also, if you look at the entrance and exits of the site, everyone has got to come either down that road from the traffic lights or up that road. So you're going to get noise nuisance for also other people in Victoria Road. there are evidence that Isle of Place residents are concerned at the impact of 24-hour opening, and they've also, as Councillor Tuckwell said, have discussed this with all councillors. With regard to the South Ruislip Residents Association, this application or our application is on behalf of the members of South Ruislip Residents Association. So, if you look at 1,900 members, thank you very much, Mrs. Calton. If you look down Victoria Road of late, probably not of late, in the last couple of years, we have had high-speed races in several of the car parks, and that includes Asda. And it is an incredible nuisance to neighbours where these guys come in with their high-powered cars, making an amazing noise, radios blaring, etc., etc. So these are the issues that happen down in the Asda sites. The other thing that I'm interested in is that, you know, with all the CCTV, etc., that you've explained, why is it that you've got security guards at Ruislip McDonalds? And this really does emphasise the problems with antisocial behaviour. I think the other thing is that it seems that young people like anywhere where there's light. They congregate where there's light. And if you're going to have a massive, great McDonald's sign on the Victoria Road, it's almost an invitation for groups of youngsters like this to go down into the site and cause trouble. We were in a car park the other day, and it was full. It was full of nitrous oxide canisters and all sorts of other things. So these are the things that we're obviously concerned about as well. The SNT have reported on many occasions the antisocial behaviour in the car park at Asda and potential drugs exchanges. There is evidence from the security footage from Savills Security and antisocial behaviour in Asda car park area, and will staff be able to deal with anything that kicks off outside their store. And this brings you back to Ruislip store, where you've got security guards to almost stop this happening. Okay. I'm not going to go on too much more on this because I think everything's been covered. Mrs. Kaufman might have a few more words to say on this issue, but as far as the application is concerned, I cannot see any evidence which suggests that there is a need for 24-hour opening. I can understand sort of shutting at 11 o'clock like everyone else, and all that will happen. I don't know with your other stores that are 24-hour what the footfall is, etc., etc., but that's not the issue here. It's what happens with regard to antisocial behaviour with a 24-hour licence. So we are absolutely against this and would suggest that we go back to an ordinary licence of closure at 11 o'clock. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions, clarification on what's been presented? No? Just on that one point about a need for, that is not a licensing, it's not in our remit, so that doesn't come under it, so that's not something that we can consider. Also, you made a point about security guards at Ruislip, but once again, I have to emphasise this application on its own merits. It really has got nothing to do with Ruislip. Yeah, so this is just about this application. That's okay. Just so people are aware that on what we can consider and what we will consider and what we will not consider. So let's make it quite clear. Business needs is not one of our remits. So if I could go on to now, thank you for that. Mrs. Kaufman. You will need to switch on speaker, please. Thank you.
Kaufman.
Sorry, we've got Lynn Kaufman, then we've got Mr. Bumme Chandani. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find where Mrs. Councillor has made reps.
From the PCC at St Mary's Church. Got it?
St Mary's Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's page 1 or 2 of the agenda.
It seems irrelevant to go through what everybody has discussed, and I actually have enjoyed listening to what McDonald's have been saying about their application. As a user of McDonald's and as a user of McDonald's in the area, not because I love McDonald's, but because I have grandchildren, and the experience has not been very good. It has not been. Now, Mr. Hamilton described, I think it was Mr. Hamilton said, if there's a problem in the store, a button is pressed and someone in Scotland says, behave yourselves in that store, well, that happened to me. I took the children to the McDonald's store in Ruislip, which is one of your stores. There were 6 children, young adults, with one drink between them upstairs, because you can't really sit and eat downstairs because it's all Deliveroo. I was very surprised to hear the language and what was coming out of these children's mouths, and I was about to say something when a voice from on high said, "We don't accept antisocial behaviour in this store," and I won't tell you what the boys said because I don't swear, but it was extremely rude, and a few signs as well. And they decided they weren't going to clear off, they weren't going to go. In the end, I got up and I said, "Look, guys, when you were 4 years old, would you have wanted to be exposed to this sort of treatment?" And they said, "No, clear off, you know." Anyway, eventually when they left, one lad came to me and said, "I'm sorry, missus, we didn't mean it." Now, to me, it does show that you can't do things remotely. You spoke about your franchisees. Now, I've got friends who are franchisees. Sometimes, not in McDonald's, I might say, but sometimes, if you're a franchisee, you know what the rules are, but you don't necessarily stick to them. And I don't know whether, Mr. Hamilton, you'd like to sort of respond on that one. Also, you did mention that between 11 and 9, the litter picking would stop, because you've got to think of the safety of staff. So what are you saying, between 11 and 9 it might not be safe for residents to be out there? You know, I'm very concerned, as a long-time member of this area, that we don't have stores in this area that are starting to bring it down, and I think to have 24-hour opening would be a big mistake. And I know that St Mary's Church were 100% behind that.
I can multitask. I can listen and talk at the same time.
I finished. I just wanted... There was no point, Mr. Chairman, in repeating what everybody else has said, because I totally are behind what everyone has said, especially Councillor Tuckwell. Very good presentation.
Thank you very much.
But I just have personal experience of the things that the guys have mentioned that don't really happen.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay. Councillors, any questions on that? No? Right. Mr. Bumit. Is it Bumit?
Yes, Chairman. I think everyone has...
Sorry, can I find the rep? Sorry, what page?
So I'm representing the complaint by my wife. It's under the name of Priya Bojani.
Okay, found it. 3D. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think everyone has raised the concerns, and as a resident myself, we can clearly see the antisocial behavior happening in the area, and particularly about the delivery drivers, that they mentioned that they are going to go all the way around the car park and then walk towards the store. However, in reality, as the other gentleman mentioned, that they will be parking their mopeds at the loading bay, which is next to the Nando's, and using the pedestrianised area. So clearly, it contradicts what you're saying, and in reality, we know how the delivery drivers are and what they behave, and unfortunately, they are not willing to take responsibility for anything that happens outside their store. So hence, I think we strongly object as a residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, anything on what's presented now? You mentioned something about the mopeds, that they're going to...
Yes, Chairman. So what they are saying is that they're going to drive all the way around to the car park, which is the ground floor in Asda, and then come towards the McDonald's to collect the deliveries. However, in reality, they all park at the loading bay, which is next to the Nando's, which is a pedestrianised area, and it will be causing more nuisance to the Dolomite Court residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm conscious that we're approaching sort of 1 3/4 hours. So what I'm going to propose is a quick 5-minute refreshment bathroom break. And if you're back here by sort of 14 minutes to 12, we won't switch off the feed. So be careful what you say. Thank you. I said to my mates. Right, okay, we're ready to go now. I needed that break. Just a point of, I think, sorry, if you actually make the point of what's been said, thank you. Legal's just got to make a little statement.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Councillor Gardner. The applicant said, told me, I wasn't in the room, that you've had a conversation briefly with one of the councillors who submitted an objection. Just to confirm, could you just confirm what the kind of broad nature of the conversation was? Was it about the merits of the case at all?
No, it was about the fact that my legs don't work. That's why I walked around there for, I have a bone disease. Most people know that.
Yeah, we'll crack on then. Thank you for that. I'll start off, Lewis.
Sir, sorry, if you could just be put on the record that during the recess, Councillor Gardner has explained why she was there, but during the recess, she was over at the back, sat with her councillor colleagues during the course of a hearing, and there was it's been raised as a point of concern, though I'm grateful for the explanation. The optics, however, as you know, are just as important as the explanation, and the optics are far from good. Thank you.
With the greatest respect, I didn't go and sit down because the object exercise was me moving so I could get my bones to work, okay?
I think the question's been asked, the question has been answered, and I've accepted that, and then we move on. Lewis, start with you first. The premises which are located close by, what I understand there's licensing hours that have been granted, but what hours do they actually open? We'll start off with ASDA first. What's ASDA's opening hours?
I visited the site last week and can confirm that ASDA's current opening hours are Monday to Saturday, 0700 until 2300 hours, and on Sunday they are open 1100 hours until 1700 hours.
And Nando's, I believe, is 11 to 23?
Again, visited the premises last week, and on their entrance door they are advertising that their hours are Monday to Sunday, 11:30 until 2200 hours. Sorry, yes, no, so ASDA...
I'll do it. ASDA is Monday. Oops, sorry, I should have switched on. Who else have we got here? And in terms of 24 hours. So just on that, Cineworld. What are the hours?
Cineworld is a little bit more unusual in the fact that their opening hours will depend on the films that they are showing and how late they run. So on their entrance door, when I visited last week, they had only posted their opening hours for the 7th of July to the 13th of July, with their opening time at 9:30 in the morning, and they indicated that the last film showing was at 21:10 hours, and that was the only information that was available at the time of my visit. So I'm going to, one can assume that they would close once the last film had finished and people had then vacated. But that's not posted on the door.
Yeah, so just to confirm, as they're 7 to 11, 11 to 5, Nando's we had, and Cineworld, because Cineworld has a 24-hour late night refreshment license as well, I believe.
Yes, according to their licence, but obviously, operational decisions are for Cineworld, so I can't really comment on what they are electing to do at this present moment in time in terms of their licence. They've applied for what they've applied for and have had that granted, so I'm going to assume it's an operational reason for the hours that they're currently operating at and what they're offering at the cinema.
In terms of when you received representation of objection, was this passed on to the applicant?
Yes, the applicant received every representation. They were sent over in batches to them as and when they were received. So rather than one every single day, for example, I waited till I had a significant number and then emailed them over to the applicant's solicitor as and when there was sufficient quantity to do so.
Can you give me a date and a volume that you sent them, and when you sent them, please?
They're all on my laptop, I must admit. I don't have the exact dates written down in a... but as and when they came in, I felt it, rather than leaving it to the very last minute, I felt it prudent to send. So they would have had all 54 representations against. They had the representation for the application, and they also had a copy of the petition as well.
It's just like to add, that all representation that was received is noted and it was read. Did you get any response from the applicant?
So the applicant's solicitor acknowledged their receipt.
Thank you. We move on to the applicant, and anybody can answer on these points. The licensing officers made the point that all these objections were sent to yourselves. How do you then deal with these all this mail that's saying we're against the application?
I'm not sure what point the licensing officer is being made, sir, but if you're asking a question on what we do with the reps, they are carefully read, they're carefully considered. If we think there is any merit in engaging with the local residents, that is also done, and a response is being prepared here for you and your colleagues.
So you're saying, if I understand this correctly, you receive the representation, you go through it, and if you feel there's merit there, then you reply to residents or licensing authority?
So,
are you saying that you felt there was no merit then? Because obviously you haven't. That's the question I'm asking.
So it's a question of ease when they're sort of so widely spread. When we don't know who the identity of the franchisee is going to be, where the role of the franchisee is provisional, what McDonald's have done through experience is that it's easier for us to come here and talk with the representatives, you three, of civil society, rather than meet with them directly. Though sometimes, Mark, you do meet with some groups directly.
So you're an extremely experienced barrister. I do know you. You've sat before us. Well, I think I was sitting on the NAT table many moons ago. You're aware the representation is what we base it on. And again, you've not received 1, 2, 5. You've received multiple representation objecting to this application. It's been sent in a timely manner, as we've been told, and what I'm told is if you felt there's no merit, you will not respond to it. Otherwise, you will take it up in the subcommittee.
So,
am I correct in understanding that is what you've said?
So you'll see the reps. They may be great in volume, but the themes they raise are fairly focused. The most appropriate response is to direct them with you. The reason is you've intervened on a number of occasions because you recognise what is relevant and what is not relevant. So your councillor colleague that is serving his community very well, for example, talks about how much his local residents are fearful and anxious. You and your colleagues know that fears and anxiety are not relevant considerations. He, for example, talks about the shops and the buggies and the illegal parkings, all of it, which are activities that happen during the day. To directly talk to people that are well-meaning but don't necessarily understand the legal distinction between their fears, anxieties and concerns and what is a relevant representation is not helpful. That's why you and your two colleagues who are here, who do understand the difference between relevant and irrelevant representations, is the best forum to engage with civil society.
Thank you. You used the word fruitless in terms of the representation made. So if you go on to this is the part of that with representations made. Let's go on to, where is he? Page 117. I won't read the name out.
No.
But again, it says there's an objections, but it does say there that they understand the balance between commercial interest and the community well-being. We've had most of the representation has raised.
Sorry, are we on the same page? Sorry, so
No,
what
we've
page
moved off 117 now. I'm just saying, you said it's fruitless, yet the point has been made that there needs to be a balance.
Where does it say balance here? We might be on that. Okay, sorry, it's on page 118.
Yeah, it crossed the page, sorry.
So, can I comment on this representation, or you just
I'm just
want to present your gloss?
I'm just making my point that the representation that's been made, a lot of it is, you can say it's similar because it's residents live in the same vicinity. I've marked up who's in Arla Place and who's not in Arla Place as such, or close proximity. And a lot of it, on that one point, if you can make, I would like, it's not a fruitless representation. It's what they experience currently and what they feel they should be. So it's not a clear demarcation. We don't want a McDonald's here. It's a case of this is what we need to have a balance.
So, firstly, sir, they have to establish that there are detrimental effects. Well-being and quality of life is not the correct legal test. Your planning department has already made a decision about the amenity balance, which deals with well-being and quality of life, and have determined that these types of stores without restrictions are suitable for this area. In terms of the operation of McDonald's, noise levels, disruptive activities and potential disturbances, what you need to test against that is actually whether or not the operating schedule can meet those concerns. So in terms of noise levels, there is no evidence, and in fact the contrary is the case, that in terms of plant and facilities and so on, there'll be no noise impact. In terms of disruptive activities, deliveries, waste are all happening during normal hours. Deliveries from the premises are being organised in its own dedicated room and in its own dedicated area. So that's not the case. And therefore the potential for disturbances is what you're trying to assess is greatly limited by the operating schedule. By taking out the emotion and the passion that local residents naturally have, you're able to do that. During peak hours, she talks about vehicular traffic. Well, traffic on the public realm is not a licensable activity. And of course, we're not talking about peak hours. We're talking about what happens between 11 to 5. So there you go. In terms of limited parking facilities, your local authority has decided that this area should have the benefit of an open 24/7 free parking facility. So you've invited people in the area, people and businesses, that can stay in the car park area for up to 4 hours free of charge. So there are no limited parking facilities. In fact, there are council-mandated parking facilities. Is there going to be an inevitable generation of waste and litter? Well, we say no, because that waste and litter is separated out and is able to be managed. In terms of the cleanliness of our neighbourhood and so on, we agree with this particular local resident, which is why we've gone through all the measures that we've discussed with you, and why I very openly said, well, are there any measures we can add to? So, for example, the request about the playground. We absolutely agree that we don't want to see litter in the McDonald's playground, so we can undertake that as well as our minimum number of cleaning events, we will also include the local playground in that area. In terms of balance, of course, that relates to the legal test set out in Hope and Glory, which is summarised as this particular location for this particular activities. Well, Your council have already answered the legal test in terms of hope and glory, because you have said from 2014, yes, we want 5 restaurants in this area, and we want 5 restaurants operating without restriction, and we want to give them a free 24-hour parking space. So you've already said, through Hillingdon's other voices, that this is a suitable location for this type of activity. So, sir, the legal test that you have to apply and the engagement with the relevant representations is a focused legal exercise, and it's this discussion that is fruitful rather than a discussion that is had with well-meaning residents that might come with, as their local councillor has said, their fears and the anxieties that they may present. We're concerned about the real evidence of operation, which I say to you can meet all of those fears and anxieties and provide a good neighbour in accordance with Hillingdon's planning vision that they very clearly set out from at least 2014.
If you go to page 18, 9.3, last paragraph, last sentence, it's quite clear. When addressing public nuisance in the applicant should identify any particular issues that are likely to affect adversely the promotion of the licensing objectives. So the ball is firmly in your court.
Yes.
You have a business
Yes.
that wants to open for 24 hours.
Yes.
Licensable hours, as you put down, as you said, between 11 and 5. Now, 11 o'clock and 5 p.m. Now, the point was made regards your customer base.
Well, sir, sorry, can we just read the full guidance there? They should include in the operating schedule how they will deal with those matters. And this is why I come back to...
If you let me finish first. Let me finish. Okay? So it's quite clear that the applicant has to think forward as to what possible noise nuisance, specifically, should we go to noise nuisance? And you have laid down the conditions of deliveries, how the deliveries are going to take place, okay? Now the point was made about your customer base. You care about your neighbours, which you've said on many occasions. You have a worldwide policy on how you do this. You have a national policy. You have a potential franchisee with 9 stores, I think 9 or 10 stores. So he's very experienced, so he understands. Now to the residents, quite clearly, they feel these are the issues that were going to be faced. So the law, absolutely, we have to abide by the law, and we are governed by it. So, and what we can take as representation, what we cannot. So the question is quite simple. People are going to come to your 24-hour premises. They're going to be parking, most probably, I suggest, they're going to be parking in Asda. At what hours of the day? And there's a genuine concern of how you're going to manage that in terms of doors shutting, closing, music being played. This is a genuine concern. I know your legal representative said it's not in front of McDonald's. Yes, it's not. But it's to your right. It's to your left. It's to your front. A bit further up. So this is a genuine concern. Now, we're not trying to catch you out or anything else. This is, we're just ordinary Joe Blogs saying in terms of what will you have in terms of this kind of control, because this is potential to see this problem. There's going to be a problem, people walking up and down Isle Place, from the station, from the pub, from the Middlesex Arms, from Paul's Fish Bar, as it says there, possibly even from Crown Conference Centre. Yeah, if the food's not nice there, they might as well pop down and go there. So the place of entry by walking is across this residential area. By driving, it's across Victoria Road, down this one way, into the car park. So the question is, how will that be managed?
So, sir, we get to considerations of what is a relevant representation. You will know from the Section 182 guidance, it's in Chapter 14, that licensing is not the panacea. It is part of a holistic approach to antisocial behaviour and the nighttime economy. I hope you know that. It's reflected in your statement of licensing policy. So when you talk about nuisance, and noise nuisance in particular, you've also got to be mindful of the fact that we're talking about a licensable activity that happens between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. the following morning. So deliveries of stock, not a relevant consideration, albeit it happens during the day. Waste collection happens during the day, not a relevant consideration. The role of the delivery drivers, that of course is a relevant consideration. And
sorry, can we just go on, in terms of how your customers will be arriving and leaving? I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying, do you have any policy on that? Mr. Campos, how do you manage it currently in your
legal question?
Yeah.
So, sir, what I'm trying to get to is what you're asking is something that is irrelevant, wrong, and misinformed. And let me explain this. How people go and leave a licensed premises is completely out with the control. Tell me, you as a borough might want to encourage public transport, less cars. How can you control how each of us arrived at this venue here today? When I leave here and move down your high street, I'm going to get the tube, by the way, how can you control whether I visit the shops, whether I throw this plastic bottle into the litter bin, a recycling bin, or just toss it into the street?
Let me put my question a different way then.
What a right way.
If between the hours of 11 and 5, residents complain that there's huge disruption to their lives by noise made by customers using the McDonald's site between the hours of 11 and 5, how will that be dealt with?
Well, so that's very helpful because you've phrased it correctly. You've referred to the McDonald's site. And so the McDonald's site comprises the premises and the area in our direct vicinity. So I've already said that the retail area at the front is going to be closed at 11 o'clock. So there is no dining outside of our premises. Of course, I can't control whether people eat at home or further down the street. The McDonald's site does not include any of the public available car parking because I cannot control what people do in the car park areas. I can control delivery
maybe you might
vehicles.
misheard the question. The question was, residents have complained. How will that be dealt with? That's all I asked. So, you can answer it. I saw Mr. Campos would like. He runs the show. He knows what he's doing, and it'd be good to hear what he does practically. I get what you said. I'm just saying, he looks eager to answer it. So,
May well be. So he's already answered that question. I'll ask him to reiterate again. But in direct answer to the question previously, he explained how he would receive a call. Many McDonald's have a dedicated email or telephone number that they can be used. He will investigate the source of the call. He will engage with the local resident, and then he will look back at his site and see what it is that he can do, if anything, to help that concern. But the Section 182 guidance makes a difference between relevant reps that are associated with the premises and those reps that are associated with the conduct of people away from the premises. And if we're trying to control the conduct of people away from the premises, then we're focusing on the wrong aspect because we can't expect McDonald's to deal with that. Now, I know Mr. Campos has gone through this already, but I'll ask him to go through it again in respect of a complaint. And your question is very much in respect of a generic complaint, and so I'd ask you to obviously bear that in mind, as opposed to anything very specific.
The generic complaint in terms of the representation made, that seems to be quite evident in all the representation made, where that is a concern. So
the example you gave, and I'm just trying to get to the root of it, you said about parking. How will you manage that parking? You can't honestly expect McDonald's to manage the Asda car park. What are you going to do about people's doors, music, and the doors again, which you say are a genuine concern? But of course that's not a genuine concern, is it? Because it's outside the control of what McDonald's can do, which is why it doesn't fall within the bounds of what might be a relevant representation. But in terms of general complaints, I'll ask Mr. Campbell again to address you, but we're certainly not going to be managing the Asda car park and can't be expected to.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I really don't have much more to add other than the example that I gave you earlier in this hearing, that, look, it's in my interest to, of course, meet with local residents, understand what their concerns are, work shoulder to shoulder with them, because at the end of the day, it's a place of work for my staff as well as a place to live for my customers. So it is, I have a vested interest to make sure that the restaurant, the community in which I trade, is a safe and respectful place for everyone. Of course I do. It's not lost on me. I understand, and I hear the concerns raised. And I guess my comment on that is, of course, those are within reason. I would be there to listen, to understand, and to work collaboratively to try to move forward on those. And I'm hoping that gives a level of confidence that, as I said earlier on, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm in it for 20 plus years from the next site that I'm given. So it is in my interest to do the right thing. Thank you.
In terms of litter picks, you're going to do 4 litter picks a day. So how much do you generate in terms of litter, kilos or?
So we do a minimum of 4 a day. We keep our route plan always under review, and if there are more litter picks required, we will do more. McDonald's pick up all litter, so we don't just pick our litter and leave Nando's chicken on the side or whatever it may be, so including those canisters and so on. So the volume of litter that we actually collect is huge, but we believe in a clean surrounding area. So whatever litter there is, we pick it up. We're welcome to work with volunteers if anyone wants to join us. Otherwise, there's a minimum of 4, but that is increased, and there is normally dedicated staff whose job is just to collect litter. And I think that's probably the case at this store as well. And as I've said, as a result of what we've heard today, the playground area will be included in our litter pick. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm just going to add, that's a really good example of where if there is a specific hotspot that does come up, such as the playground, of course it's in my interest to be open to that discussion, work with the local community and find a workable solution, because I understand that I have a role to play in that. So of course, playground is a fantastic example of where it's an easy fix. We can absolutely get our teams on board with that, and I'm hoping to see a marked improvement once the restaurant does open.
And so to give you an example of where the limits might be, for example, an area which has a central motorway reserve, if people are throwing things out of their window, which we all acknowledge is antisocial, no one likes that, but it's not safe for someone to cross a motorway, a sort of roundabout area to get to that central reservation, they won't. But the litter plans are undertaken in consultation with the local community, and reasonable efforts are made to target the relevant areas.
Thank you. So you're aware of, you have one resident who's a litter picker.
Yes, page 141.
Page 140, but we won't argue over that one. Just to go back on that, the point you made about if a resident complained, you would look at the complaint, and if you felt it was relevant, then you would obviously deal with it or go back to the resident. I'm just understanding that point, because obviously I understand with all the representation that was made. So I'm just right that would this be also logged on your incident log as well?
So yeah, they're all logged, so that we can review what actions are taken. So let's give you an example.
So it was just because I understood the question. So in terms of how many times, when is this incident log actually interrogated?
So the incident logs are reviewed by the franchisee, normally weekly or monthly. They're reviewed with the sort of area manager. They're reviewed centrally with McDonald's. They're signed off, so you can see the different levels of reviews, and any lessons that need to be drawn from them are taken from those.
Sorry, there's a big time period. Is it weekly or is it monthly? I mean, Mr. Compass, you could tell us. Is it weekly or just?
So it depends on whether or not there are any specific issues. If we are working and doing our jobs, which is the litter picks, and there is no issues, then a review every month is appropriate. If there's a specific period where there's heightened activity, then of course we will increase the frequency in which we review it. In some situations, on other checklists, it's hourly as demanded by McDonald's, but in other times less frequently. But it is dependent on what we're working towards, what's been agreed, and what's the right action plan for it. Just saying that I'm reviewing it weekly or even monthly doesn't necessarily mean that it gets action, but of course it's the outputs of that and working with the local residents to make sure that any issues are addressed appropriately.
This one's for Lewis. Have we ever any MEs raised regards issues around this immediate area?
I did contact.
Can you explain what MEs are and how?
Sorry, I'll do that once again.
And whether they're
MEs are something called members' inquiries, where if any issues are raised, a member raises it with the council, and we're rather proud of this. We get an answer within 10 working days of a response as to whatever that's happening.
And so, can you take me where in the bundle MEs have been raised as a relevant representation within the time period?
Then you get to that point in a second.
Well, no, you're giving evidence that's not related to the relevant representation.
I'm asking a question whether any members' inquiries have been raised.
I made inquiries with our resident services members' inquiries team, who did various searches on various terminology, so Old Dairy, Arla Place, McDonald's, Nando's, and they reported back that there were no members' inquiries for this location.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Gardner.
Sorry, so before we move on, just through you, can you ask Lois about the petrol station and its hours of operation?
We'll do that. If you just start with Janet Gardner, Councillor Gardner first, then we'll come back to that. Councillor Gardner.
On the maps where you've got the outside dining area, presumably there'll be chairs and tables there. If there are, who's going to bring them in and where are they going to be after, I don't know, when you stop?
Just one second. Lewis, the question was, do we have the hours of the petrol station? Which petrol station is the one that's straight outside? Yeah.
I believe if Council's correct, yes, it's the one where you go down the surface road and it's at the bottom, just before you get into the Asda car park. I'm afraid, Chair, that I don't have the information, but I'm quite happy to look it up on my computer and answer that shortly once I've got that information, if that would be of benefit. I don't know. That's why I just need to just double check.
It's important because it's our understanding that it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as part of your planning vision and your planning permission. It'd be useful to know if it's licensed as well.
Okay, we could is that okay for Lewis?
Yeah.
Lewis, if you look that up.
Chair, just while
a couple of questions from our legal.
Looking that up. So it's a question for the applicant, and it's based on the licensing authority's representation. Just so we're crystal clear. starting at page 42 of the reports pack. At the bottom, you can see there's a proposed condition 1, and over the page, proposed condition 2 about CCTV. Is the just to confirm, the applicant's content to have those on the licence rather than what was proposed? Same question with number 3. That would be a new condition on the licence. Again, the applicant's happy with that. Now, number 4, seems to me that's probably covered by the regulatory reform fire safety order. Just invite your views on whether that's a necessary condition to be added.
If it is, then we comply with it in any event. If the councillors want to add it, they can.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. That's it from me.
Nothing else? Okay. We'll now move on to, if there's any questions for me. By the way, councillors can ask questions of, yes? If you want to ask questions, there's a final chance. If you come up at the table, or anybody who made representation, we can ask questions of each other. So I'll make sure I don't forget that. If you want to ask questions, councillor, you have to be on the table on what's been presented and what's been discussed. Councillor Sackwell.
No, thank you. I think just a couple of points to pick up, and I think one of the points I did want to pick up was around types of litter being collected, and I think the guys here have clarified that. But the members' inquiry piece, I will check my records on that, because I know there's been dozens, particularly around this planning application. I've got all the reference numbers and everything, so I think it might, if you used 4 Old Dairy Lane as the address, because they might have been listed down as Isla Place.
Thank you. On that, page 197. I think, who's this for, Lewis? Yeah, Lewis. On pages, quite a few. Thank you, Councillor Saffer. Pages 200 and. Here we go. Pages 205 to pages 216. Could you just shed a bit of light on this, please?
So, page 205 to 216 is an incident diary that was submitted by one of the interested parties who made a representation. Looking at it, and this is not my area of expertise, Councillor, it would appear to be a diary whereby a resident would make a record of incidents of, in this case, antisocial behaviour relating to the area of the Old Dairy. So I don't know whether or not this person has been asked to complete this by somebody. I don't think that's clear in their representation. They've just submitted, I'm just having a look just to see if it says that they were asked to do this, but it's a record of a resident's issues of antisocial behaviour in the Old Dairy. I think it's mostly the car park. It talks about noise from car engines, and it does talk about the car park.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to that point, if it was your permission, through you.
Are you asking a question? Who to?
It's just to clarify what the officer has said there. I attended a ward panel meeting with the Metropolitan Police Safer Neighbourhood team a couple of weeks ago, where they present crime statistics for the whole of South Ruislip, and wouldn't be surprised to learn that the hotspot for antisocial behaviour, car crime, theft and the like was centric around the car parks that surround Isla Place and the walkway in Isla Place itself. So I thought I'd just make the committee aware of that.
Thank you. Right. Is that it? Nobody else? Right, okay, we're going to go for brief, emphasise the word brief closing remarks. So we're going opposite order now. So, Mr. Chandni, would you like to make any comments? Mrs. Kaufman? Mr. Kaufman? Councillor Tuckwell?
Yeah, just very briefly. I've enjoyed the conversation today, and I think all I would just say to the committee in making their deliberations that I think this application would be in conflict with the council's primary objective, which is to put residents first. Thank you.
Daniel. Oh, yeah, I wonder if right. Okay, we go on to the applicant.
Sir, thank you.
Mr. Campos, would you like to add anything to that?
Just one point, because I think attrition was mentioned along with one of the points. I'd like to tell you a little bit of a story. I started as a 17-year-old young boy with McDonald's, and
I did say brief remark.
Brief.
Just brief remark in terms of, as your councillor said, just summarising what he feels has gone beforehand in terms of, like I said, I'm keen for the guy who's actually going to be operating it to be saying, fire away.
I may have mentioned before, I'm committed to the restaurant. I'm committed to the long-term success of working collaboratively with local residents, and I've made those points during the course of today's hearing. I will, of course, be happy to stay behind afterwards and share my number, share my details, so that we can begin that dialogue and that discussion. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. On that point, right, sorry, Lewis.
Unfortunately, I've not been able to locate a file or a premises licence for the petrol station. That's not to say that one doesn't exist. I'm just struggling because it's a new address on the system. I'm struggling to locate whether there is a licence in existence. So yeah, apologies for that, Chair. I'm struggling to find anything for the petrol station, full stop, on our system. That doesn't mean to say there isn't a licence there. I just can't find anything for it, I'm afraid.
If you just Google up, I don't know what you put, I think it's Shell or S or whatever. If you just Google up their address on Victoria Road, I'm sure you can find something on there in terms of their opening hours. And I'm happy if that's okay with everybody, I'm happy if you do find that information, you can pass it back to somebody. And then we get right. We've got to go and deliberate. So if everybody takes all your bits and pieces with you, then you can either wait for the decision, or it could be a while, or it will be broadcast, and you'll get written notification from Democratic Services. Thank you, everybody.